My son-in-law pressed a crumpled 10 into my palm, shut the car door, and left me on the curb beneath a harsh grocery store neon. At 66, I've learned not to plead. I steadied my breath, noted the time and his plate, and saw my daughter keep her eyes forward. Days later, when his message read, "Don't overreact," I didn't. I made one quiet call, opened a case number, and let adults who keep records do the talking. That call didn't end a fight. It began a paper trail that turned small humiliations into boundaries and private gaslighting into public accountability. Before I continue the story, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from. The curb was still warm from the day when Joran eased the SUV to the edge of the lot and said he'd be right back. The door clicked, the locks thumped, and the window slid down just enough for a folded bill to pass through his fingers. $10. It landed in my palm like a dare. I opened my mouth to ask why we couldn't finish the conversation at home, but the tail lights flared and the car drifted away under the pink neon of the convenience store across Whitestone Boulevard. Kira sat rigid in the passenger seat, hands clasped around her leather purse, eyes forward, as if I were nothing more than a mile of road to be driven over. I checked the time, 8:17, and set it under my breath the way I used to chart vitals. The neon threw a rectangle of rose across the asphalt while the sodium lamps made a slow halo above the pumps. A breeze carried Friar Salt rubber and the sharp green of cedar. Texas evenings have their own chorus, one motorcycle, two teenagers laughing, a shopping cartwheel chirping. I cataloged each sound without letting the hurt take the wheel, one detail at a time, the way I kept hallways safe for people who could not stand for themselves. Witness. First wounded, second. Inside the store, lights buzzed like a hive. Jonelle, the clerk with copper hair, looped into a clip, looked up and then again. "Are you safe, ma'am?" she asked. The nurse in me answered before the woman in me did. "I will be." The bus app told me what I already suspected. Last run had come and gone. A rideshare wanted $31 to take me 6 miles. I triaged the moment the way I once triaged a cluster of call lights: stabilize, gather information, plan, discharge, then act. I asked Jonelle for the store's address and texted it to myself so the record would not rely on memory. I stepped back outside, turned the bill edgewise beside my shoes, and took a wide-shot neon halo curb paint, the shadow of my shoulder, then a close frame with the date and time glowing at the top of my phone. My hands were steady. I called Kira. It rolled to voicemail. I kept my voice even. "It's Mom. I'm at the Quickway on Whitestone. I'll walk home. 45 minutes, give or take. I'll text when I'm in." I saved the voicemail, confirmed that message retention was set to keep forever, and opened the folder on my phone labeled Family Documentation. The phone pinged. "Joran, don't overreact. It was a joke." I stared at the words until the neon flickered. A joke requires 2 people to laugh. I took a clean screenshot that caught the full header, the minute stamp, even my battery percentage. I filed it in the same folder and locked the screen. I did not reply. Arguments live forever in a way dignity cannot. Let the message be the thing it was. Let it speak for him later, not for me now. The sidewalk along Whitestone is not pretty, but it is lit, and after 3 decades of night shifts, I know how to gauge a block. I chose the long side where storefronts stay open, shoes, flat bag close. A patrol car slid past. I met the officer's eyes, gave a small nod, and kept walking. The March air was cool enough to keep my thoughts crisp. I texted Lacey, my neighbor across the cul-de-sac, walking from Quickway on Whitestone, ETA 4555. Will ping when I'm in. Her reply arrived at once, a tiny row of hearts I could feel but not lean on. Whitestone thins to rooftops and oak as it rises. I counted crosswalks and watched the glow behind me shrink to a thumbnail. A man with a paper sack passed me and tipped his chin. I tipped mine. No drama, no rescue, only choice. If the $10 was meant to tell me what I was worth, the walking told me. What I still owned: my pace, my breath, my ability to move forward without permission. By the time the hill lifted toward our street, my breathing had settled into the rhythm I keep for long hallways. The cul-de-sac was quiet except for one television glow and Lacey's lamp pouring onto her azaleas. Inside my townhouse, I set the kettle to hum and slid the chain across the door. I pressed the bill between two index cards, wrote the date time location and the word Curbside, and sealed it in a clear envelope. I labeled the envelope with a black pen the way we labeled specimens in the old lab where I started my career. I poured tea, left the porch light on for Lacey, and wrote a single line at the top of a yellow pad, $10 neon sign Sunday night. Under it, I listed the things I had seen and the one thing I had decided. I would not let this become a story about me being fragile. I would let it be a record about me being attentive. The distinction matters when people later tell the story for you. I wrote the time I started walking and the time I reached home, and I drew a tiny square to represent the curb and a tiny circle to mark where the 10 changed meaning. Before bed, I slid the envelope into a small fireproof box with passports and the deed copy, then enabled automatic backups on my phone. Evidence rots when people depend on memory. I sent Lacey one more line in and locked and watched for her porch light to blink twice in reply. I opened a new message to Joanne, wrote sentences that begged for decency, then held backspace until the field was clean. A boundary isn't a speech, it's the silence after one. I powered down my phone, rinsed the cup, and listened to the house settle around me like a hand on my shoulder. I kept the $10. What I refused to keep was their story about me. Morning light slipped through the blinds in narrow bands, the kind that make dust look like a weather report. The kettle hissed and clicked. I let it talk while my mind replayed last night's Curbside, the door shut. The taillights pulled away, the bill folded once, twice, pressed into my palm like a pity ticket. $10. I could still feel the crease against my skin. My phone buzzed with the ordinary district emails, cafeteria menus, a field trip reminder. Nothing loud. Heard at home rarely arrives with sirens. It hides in admin noise. I stood at the counter and breathed. $10 bruised my pride. One word was about to bruise my place. Before I called anyone, I chose the rule that has saved many a patient: verify before you speak. Check the time witness's paperwork. I wanted to fire off a message to demand why. The older part of me remembered how little good that ever did. I opened my inbox with the same calm I used to open charting after a bad night. Near the top sat a thread I wasn't meant to see. Emergency contact changed. It was misforwarded. The line beneath told the story: primary husband's mother, other visitor. I clicked through headers and timestamps, exported the chain as a PDF, and filed it in family documentation. The system still displayed last spring's pickup card with my signature and phone. A single checkbox had moved me from caregiver to visitor. Boxes and names someone had decided my place with a click. I wrote the time on a sticky note and set it beside the keyboard. The origin showed a portal change. The attachment marked the box lowered me. I printed the PDF, slid it into a sleeve. If a form could push me down, a form could lift me. My carrier log sat under recent activity, colder than any conversation. The call I placed to Casey the night before showed a play symbol and a duration 0.04, 4 seconds. Enough for hello, not enough for care. I took a clean screenshot with the header visible, date, time, battery, and the number. I saved it to the same folder and wrote a note: no callback, no welfare check. I replayed the voicemail to be sure I had been as neutral as I remembered. I gave my location, said I would walk Whitestone home, and offered an ETA. No drama, no blame. The sound of traffic, a breath, then my ending. I did not send a follow-up text. Paper speaks. People argue with tone. They struggle with timestamps. I let the record speak for me and set the phone down. I printed the log view to PDF, not because paper is smarter, but because it is patient. I penciled S17 and filed it. Families err. Logs help. Yes. By mid-morning, I drove to the school. The security desk printed a yellow wristband that stuck to my wrist. Visitor like a verdict. I smiled at the clerk and said good morning. I signed in, waited on the bench, and asked to speak with coordinator. Sherry met me with a clipboard and a smile. I introduced myself, explained last year's caregiver routine, weekday pickups, Friday dinners, library afternoons. I didn't raise my voice. I raised facts instead. Sherry nodded, looked up the record, and confirmed what I already knew. We'll need the parents' signatures to restore pickup rights. Policy not personal. I thanked her. Could we place my history on file? I asked. And note that I've provided care consistently for the last year. She added a comment. I asked which forms accepted affidavits and witness statements. She circled two and slid the sheet across. Follow these, she said, and we can update when the parents consent. I shook her hand and walked out with rules, not rumors. Okay. In the parking lot, I sat with engine-off windows cracked and a wristband stuck to my dash like a label. I wrote the visit time, the badge number, and Sherry's name in a notebook. Then I photographed the wristband beside the dash clock, one wide frame, one close. Neutral record, the kind that ages well. I texted Lacey policy says parents must sign. I'll prepare documents instead. She replied with a heart and a thumbs up, two signs that mean I'm seen. I pictured my grandson's stride, his backpack crooked, his wave easy. I did not cry. Dignity over noise. I set the phone on airplane mode and breathed until my face steadied. I listed tasks on an index card, affidavit draft, witness statements, caregiver, schedule, portal request. Then I wrote a second line, what I will do, not what they should do. It was a small correction, and it gave me back a measure of air before I started the engine. Back home, I set the binder on the dining table and woke the printer. The PDF with the visitor change slid out first, the voicemail log capture next, then a copy of last spring's pickup card with my signature. I labeled a tab school contacts and added sticky notes, affidavit witness schedule portal. The order mattered. Chaos is loud, sequence is useful. I sharpened a pencil and wrote a simple header on a blank page, statement of care. Under it, dates and routines, Monday's library, Wednesday's spelling, Friday's dinner, and bedtime stories. No adjectives, no sighs, no judgment this time. My hand steadied around line 6. That thought fed me better than any argument could. Records win. I wrote one sentence on an index card and printed it. No more verbal battles. Only verifiable records. I slid it into the front sleeve of the binder where I'd see it first. I closed its cover and let quiet stand for me. If they could reduce me to visitor with a form, I could reduce this to case numbers. I cleared the kitchen table the way I used to reset a triage bay wipe stack. Breathe. The binder took the center tabs ready, the laptop to my left, a notepad pen and my phone on speaker. I wouldn't retell last night. I would convert it humiliation into process, sting into steps. I wrote the time at the top of the page and drew a box for a case number. When the kettle clicked off, I poured tea and let the steam warm my face while the line connected. The insurer's menu tree was familiar. Press 1 for claims, 2 for home, 3 for auto. I chose the path to a human who could open a review, not sell me a policy. When Adnan answered, we verified in 2 steps. Date of birth last 4. And I summarized, I am 66 retired RN, experienced a safety incident last night in which a family driver left me at a curb after dark. I walked home without calling emergency services. Today I'm taking preventive steps. I'd like to open a risk review on the household driver profile, I said. Please add an elder safety note and route a courtesy alert to my agent. This is not a claim, it's mitigation. Adnan repeated my wording. I'll create a reference, he said. Keys tapped. Your number is RR784231A. You'll get an email. Anything else to include? Yes. Event time, 8:15 p.m. Cedar Park outside a convenience store. No request for emergency services. I walked home. The record should show I'm reducing future exposure, understood Ms. Klein. He spelled my email. I spelled it again. He read the reference. I read it back and boxed it on the page. I noted call start and end times, queue, wait, and department. When he asked if I wanted to add the household driver's contact, I declined. File it without their names, I said. This is about my coverage and my safety. When the email arrived, I printed it and 3-hole punched it while the paper was still warm. Insurance Risk Review took its tab. Beneath the printout, I slid a brief memo in block letters, date, rep reference number, actions requested, next steps. I touched the margin with 2 fingers the way I once checked a pulse, present steady. I was not begging for kindness. I was requesting procedures. Paper does not love you, but it keeps its word. Next, the bank. I opened the app to confirm I still had view-only access to the linked household where I'd once been guarantor of overdraft courtesy. Nothing moved. Quiet money makes loud messes. I dialed authenticated and asked for risk and compliance. When Avery came on the line, their tone was crisp without being cold. "I want to map the roles tied to my profile," I said. "I'm not closing accounts. I'm removing courtesies that can be misused. Suspend the overdraft courtesy tied to my guarantor history and clarify any authorized user privileges still connected to me so I can remove them." "That's doable," Avery said. "We can suspend courtesy overdraft protection associated with your profile and remove any privileges you granted. I'll need an internal case ID and an email confirming what changed and the effective time I said. Please include the phrase, 'at customer's request for risk mitigation.'" Avery worked the keys. Suspension queued. Effective at 2:15 p.m. Central today. Authorized user privileges connected to you none active. Historical links removed. Your case ID is RC22D51. I wrote RC22D51 under the insurance reference and drew a tidy bracket. Will the affected party get a notice the next time they attempt a courtesy overdraft? Yes. A standard alert notes the courtesy is unavailable and cites the case internally. Good, I said. Please send the confirmation while we're on the line. The email arrived. We read the wording together, adjusting a preposition and adding the exact timestamp. When it matched the record in my head, I thanked Avery. "Protection is not punishment," I said, mostly to myself. After we hung up, I screenshotted the app banner noting service changes and printed the email. The binder swallowed the new pages with a clean click. Bank case ID and user privileges got 2 tabs. I dated the sticky notes and tucked one on the inside cover, possible on-screen banner, later. I slid an index card into the front sleeve. Protection is not punishment. Between hole punching and labeling, I felt the shift I always wanted but couldn't force the moment when the heart sits down and lets the hands work. I silenced the family thread, set a VIP filter for official emails, and turned my ringer to medium. If they wanted to talk, they could answer to the same case numbers I did. Numbers aren't cruel. They're indifferent, closer to fair than family on a bad week. I stood, stretched my back, and walked to the bedroom. The ER wristband from last month still lay on the dresser where I'd dropped it after checking out. The glue had gone cloudy. I remembered the monitor's beep, the nurse's palm, the doctor's words. It's stress. Your body wants you to listen. I folded the wristband into an envelope and wrote the date across the front. Not a souvenir, a warning. Back at the table, I added one more line beneath the bank case ID. Who I am inside a family is up for debate. Who I am inside a system is in writing. Then I closed the binder, palmed the smooth cover, and allowed myself a small smile. I hadn't raised my voice or my blood pressure. I had raised a file. Numbers in a file can protect you. A scare in your chest reminds you why. I exhaled once. I rose. The tightness crept up the left side of my chest just after 3:30, a polite but insistent hand at the door. I set the mug down, sat upright, and did what nurses do. Counted my breaths, measured the rhythm at my wrist, timed the ache on the watch face. Facts over panic. I texted Lacey a single line, need a lift to ER. I'm okay to walk to the car, and slid on flats. She replied, 2 minutes. I locked the binder in the drawer. If my body wanted attention, it would get care and a record, not a scene. The emergency department smelled of antiseptic and warmed blankets, the familiar blend that makes some people relax and others pace. Triage welcomed me with a cuff and a clipped kindness. Vitals, history meds. I answered plainly, 66 retired RN chest tightness, beginning 30 minutes prior, likely stress after a family incident yesterday. Walked home, no fainting, no nausea. The nurse placed electrodes with the efficiency I used to admire in my own hands. Paper scrolled from the EKG like a gnar. Could you note a brief elder safety context for the visit? I asked professional to professional. No editorializing, facts only. She nodded, wristband on. Time stamped, room 4. Monitors hummed a steady lullaby. The ache eased a tide drawing back from stones. Not a heart attack, a warning flare. I let my eyes rest on the green wave traveling its careful highway. Once I was the night shift that held families together. Tonight I was the quiet patient, alone but not abandoned. I texted Marcia, my attorney, ER eval underway. Will forward discharge for file. She pinged back, good. Paper first, feelings later. The attending stepped in with that practiced calm ER doctors wear like a durable jacket. He reviewed the strip, pressed the stethoscope under my collarbone, asked about coffee sleepwalking. Stress-related chest pain, he said. Normal enzymes. Follow up with your primary. Return if anything changes. His words were gravel steady, the kind a person can step on. Copies, please, I said. EKG cover page visit, summary discharge instructions. The unit clerk printed a crisp packet, and I placed it on the tray beside my wristband. I took a discreet photo with the bedside clock in frame. Chain of evidence is not only for courts, it's for memory when people argue about the weather inside your body. Before I left, I asked the nurse to confirm the context note made it into the record. One line neutral, she said. I thanked her the way only a former nurse can, with the particular gratitude due to someone who writes what happened instead of how they felt about it. Lacey rolled the car under the awning. The sky was the flat blue that follows a scare. We talked about tomatoes on the drive home. It was a relief to discuss something that will yield if given light and water. The road unfurled, ordinary and kind. My phone sat face down. When we pulled up, she squeezed my hand. Text me if you need tea, she said. I'll bring the good honey. At the kitchen table, I made a new tab, Health ER 033-2025, and slid the packet into the rings. I labeled a clear sleeve and tucked the wristband inside. A symbol, yes, but also a stop sign I could hold. On an index card, I wrote, Health first, process next, no more verbal storms. The rhythm of ordinary action steadied me more than any speech could. The counter buzzed, a message from a number I hadn't seen in years, a former colleague. Found your 2008 medication protocol, still training new hires with it. You saved us then, Maura. I stood very still and let the sentence do its work. The sting of visitor loosened one notch. I screenshotted the text and slid it into a digital folder, labeled Community Validation. There are measures of a life that don't depend on whether you are welcome at a kitchen table. I scanned the discharge papers and sent PDFs to Marcia with a subject line that read like a ledger, ER visit, chest pain, non-cardiac discharge attached. No adjectives, no apologies. She replied that she would add it to the binder she keeps for me and draft the template affidavits for tomorrow. The simple fact of another set of tabs somewhere in the city calmed my nerves more than any platitude. Night came with the quiet step of a tired friend. I brewed chamomile, tidied the edges of the day, and set tomorrow's list beneath my phone. Affidavits, neighbor, witness statements, school file. My body is not a courtroom. It is a home I intend to protect. I turned the ringer to low and the lights to warm. In the dim, the little sleeve holding the wristband caught a glint and returned it like a small lighthouse. I carried the binder to the drawer and closed it with a firm, ordinary shove. No speeches, no dramatic vows. Just a woman who took herself to the ER when her chest asked for attention, who asked for copies and got them, who will sleep and wake and keep moving the needle toward safety. On the fridge, I left a magnet clip note for morning me forms, beat fights. Then I breathed deep and even and let the house settle around me like a held hand. Before bed, I opened the blinds 2 inches enough to see the neighbor's porch light blink on and off. Lacey's code, home safe, sleeping. I smiled, pressed a palm to my sternum, and counted to 8 on the inhale, 8 on the release. Tomorrow would be paperwork and witness lines, not arguments. Tonight would be rest earned the old-fashioned way by choosing calm over noise. I woke to a clear list and a steadier pulse. The binder waited on the kitchen table, patient as a clerk. I brewed coffee, set out a black pen, and drafted the affidavit I wished I never had to write. I kept it plain dates. I picked up the kids overnights at my apartment. Saturday soccer runs, urgent care visits. I sat through with snack boxes and chargers. I added a notary block and left space for 2 witnesses who were not family. In the margin, I wrote a simple title, Grandmother Care History. By 9, I was parked under the live oaks by the school. Security printed the yellow wristband visitor in block letters, and I eased it on like a reminder not to flinch. I greeted Sherry at the counter and slid a concise cover letter across, followed by the ER discharge summary and a copy of last year's pickup card with my looping signature. No speeches. Which forms accept affidavits and which require parent signatures without exception, I asked. Sherry's kindness sat inside policy. She explained enrollment limits and that pickup rights follow parent authorization. She would place my history on file. Back in the car, I photographed the band beside the dashboard clock and the school sign. I wrote a short memo, date, time, wristband number, who I had spoken with, and that my history was on file pending review. A quick 30-second voice note followed so the details could settle before memory polished them. Feelings to the left, facts to the right. The nurse in me prefers both in order. The neighborhood was quiet, sprinklers ticking. Mrs. Duarte answered her door in a cardigan and the smile of someone who still grades papers in her mind. "Of course I've seen you," she said. "Fridays at 4, cookies cooling." She read my affidavit line by line and signed with a careful teacher's hand. I photographed her driver's license with her permission and clipped her contact information to the page. "You've never made noise," she added softly. "You've just shown up." Warmth rose in my throat and then settled into something sturdier. 2 blocks over, Mr. Keene met me on the porch he keeps as neat as his hedges. Every Saturday, he said, you all passed right here for soccer. Those shin guards were brighter than the sun. He signed as witness number 2, printed his name, and added his HOA email. I photographed his ID and returned both to their sleeves. We did not trade opinions. We traded accuracy. Community, not gossip. I left each neighbor a duplicate and walked back to the car, feeling like a beam had settled back into the house. At the notary, fluorescent lights buzzed with their old humming patience. The clerk checked my IDs, lined up the pages, and stamped in precise blue. The seal looked almost ceremonial. Simple authority pressed into paper. I scanned the complete packet into a single PDF with the plainest name I could manage, Affidavit Grandmother Care History, 2025-34 PDF. On my phone, I composed a short email to Sherry CCing the general admin inbox subject line. With only the kids' initials, a respectful note listing the attachments I included. Home again, I slid the yellow wristband into a sleeve beside the fresh received copy and the neatly clipped witness pages. An insult had become a marker, a bright thread in the record I was building. On an index card, I wrote, "Paper is how the quiet are heard." I set a calendar reminder to follow up in 3 business days and another to bring cookies to Mrs. Duarte for no reason except gratitude. I silenced the family threads and left VIP alerts on for school, admin, attorney, bank, and insurer. The dinner invitation from Casey sat in my inbox, a polite trap dressed as reconciliation. I set "Do Not Disturb," slid a red envelope into the binder, and set out plates for one. If policy needs signatures, then dinner will need documents. I won't raise my voice. I'll raise my exhibits. Before I closed the laptop, I sent one more line to the school. "Please confirm receipt and next review steps. I'm available for an in-person meeting." I double-checked that no file name exposed the children's names. I printed the sent email and filed it behind the stamped copy so the trail could be followed without a password. I washed the mug and left the sink dry, the kind of order that steadies the next decision. The apartment settled air handler a step overhead, the oven's tick. The yellow band itched. I wore it until the adhesive tired, then pressed it flat between wax paper so it would slide cleanly into the sleeve. Lacey texted a thumbs up when I wrote that the packet was filed. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm doing adult," I answered. She sent a photo of a rosemary cutting rooting in a jar. I noted bring a sprig to the kids' next game when it becomes possible. Hope does not need volume to be real. For a minute, I pictured Fridays as they were backpacks a cartoon, the drift toward pajamas and stories. The memory didn't unmake me, it steadied me. What was true then is true. Now I showed up. I kept watch. I loved in measurable ways. If a drop-down can erase that ink and witness lines can restore it. Enough for today. I set the binder square to the table's edge. I toggled Do Not Disturb and left 4 names exempt attorney school bank insurer. The apartment quieted like a stage after the house lights fade. I slid a red envelope into the front sleeve of my binder cover letter, a 1-page index of reference numbers and printouts of confirmations. No commentary, no color, calendar check. Dinner at 6:30 drive time, 25 minutes, 10-minute buffer. Keys tote spare. Reading glasses flats in the car just in case. On an index card, I wrote, "Boundaries in writing, beat boundaries, begged aloud, and slid it beneath the red envelope. If they wanted a performance, I would bring procedures." I placed a second set of copies in a clear sleeve marked Tonight and taped a tiny checklist to it, phone volume, checked binder tabs in order. 2 slow breaths in for 4, out for 6, until the jaw unclenched. By 4:30, the texts began. Casey's tone reached for cheerful. Joranne's phrasing pressed for control. "Let's keep tonight positive. Don't make a scene. No need to rehash." I replied once carefully, "Please put any requests in writing. I will do the same." I took clean screenshots with full headers and saved them to family documentation. Then I sent a short agenda in a separate message dinner. First, then 5 minutes for housekeeping, school contact policy, and financial boundaries. More bubbles popped requests for tone not accountability. I did not debate. I filed. Before I left, I called the bank and asked for Avery and Risk. We reviewed what we had already set in motion. Any authorized user privileges linked to me removed. Overdraft courtesy and attached perks suspended with a timestamp. Please read the case ID I said, pen ready. I wrote the number twice and repeated back the exact wording for the note, at customer's request for risk mitigation. Avery agreed to email confirmations within minutes. If someone attempts to use the courtesy tonight, will a banner or decline show, I asked. Most likely on the next swipe, Avery said, and the account owner will see the standard alert. I spelled my email twice and asked Avery to confirm the department names that would appear in the footer. I noted the cue, timed the start and end of the call, and placed a small dot next to the case ID for emphasis in my notes. The printer hummed. I slid the new email behind the index and added the reminder I keep near my checks. Protection is not punishment. A small steadiness rose, the kind that makes room for breath. I scheduled a courier through a local dispatcher pickup at 6:40 drop between 7:10 and 7:30 at Casey and Joranne's porch. No signature needed, proof of delivery photo required. The dispatcher repeated the address, then my instructions ring once hand to an adult. If refused, leave at the door and photograph. I added a note: if children answer, ask politely for a parent. My own copy of the packet stayed in the red envelope I would set by my plate. I arrived at 6:25. The cul-de-sac wore porch lights like pearls. Sprinklers stitched the air. Their message had asked for smart casual, so I wore a soft jacket and low heels I could stand in for hours. A rosemary bush brushed the walkway. The scent steadied me. My phone stayed face down in my tote with D&D on. The binder rested beside it like a quiet spine. "Thanks for having me," I said at the door. No apology. No story. Casey's eyes searched my face for a temperature. Joranne steered our greetings like traffic, one hand at my elbow, the other on the room. In the dining room, a single candle burned like good intentions. The table was already set. Dinner was pleasant in the way staged rooms are pleasant. Between the salad and the roast chicken, gentler phrases unveiled their price tags. We just need predictability, no sudden visits, no pickups without a heads up, no finances at the table, conditions dressed as calm. I asked evenly, would you prefer to list those in an email so we have the exact wording? A flicker crossed Joran's jaw. This is informal, he said. Informal terms are how people forget. I answered, turning my water glass a quarter turn so the rim lined with the napkin's seam. At 7:05, I walked the conversation to weather soccer cleats the spring carnival. I smiled where manners asked and declined the bait where history offered it. After dessert, I said, as if confirming a carpool, I'll share the case numbers so we can be done in 5. Joran tried a softer push. No need for paperwork at dinner. Paper keeps dinner peaceful, the next time I said. Under the table, my fingers felt the binder's linen texture. It steadied me better than any speech. Calm is not the absence of fear, it is the prioritizing of steps. In my peripheral vision, I saw the red envelope still unopened, a small cardinal on linen. I let the sight of it slow my pulse the way steady beeping does in a hospital room. The doorbell rang at 7:13. Sound travels differently when you're waiting for it. I folded my napkin once. Casey looked from me to the door to Joran, then back a chain of small permissions. My binder was already open to legal courier before anyone stood. I'll get it, Joran said halfway down the hall. I kept my seat. Some families passed dessert. Mine passed a courier envelope. What I kept was the tone. What I refused to keep was the story they told about me. I stayed seated when the doorbell chimed at 7:12. Casey moved first. Joran hovered by the hallway like a bouncer. The courier stood in the porch light, a red rectangle against the evening. On the label were the words I'd requested hours ago. Notice of representation and estate protections. Time sensitive. No drama. Paper. He lifted his phone for a proof of delivery photo, a small flash like a gavel. I turned one page in my binder to the legal courier tab and kept my hands flat. Skim it now, discuss later by email. I said, hospital quiet. Casey slid a butter knife under the flap, cautious, as if paper could bleed. Inside, a simple cover letter and copies of what I'd already explained contact, in writing only. A path to restore school pickup through affidavits on file. Financial autonomy documented by case numbers. I set one index card beside the breadbasket insurance ref bank case ID dates. No speech. We can read this later, I added. The card sat there like a placemat for facts. Joran's voice sharpened without warning, a blade kept for close use. You're just the babysitter with opinions. The line hung thin and bright. Casey stared at her plate. Silverware paused, pretended not to. I have been called worse by patients in pain, I thought. They were in pain. They were my patients. I breathed once and slid the index card back to my side of the table. I tapped the phone screen awake and under the tote's rim noted the time. No color rose to my face. No reply rose. The server set down a tablet for dessert. Joran took it and tapped. A bright banner slid across his phone. Services changed, see account for details. He frowned, tried again, and the card declined with a soft chime that landed louder than a shout. Casey's eyes flicked toward me, then away. If you need the case ID, I said mildly, it's on the card you handed back earlier. I didn't gloat. A boundary stands without a speech. Joran cleared his throat, muttered about the bank, and passed the tablet back. I unlocked my phone and turned the screen so the header was plain Joran's text from days ago, the one that tried to shrink the night. Don't overreact. It was a joke. I read it once level, then set the phone down. The table went very still, as if the room held its breath. I added only, I won't debate feelings. I will keep records. The sentence wasn't an insult, it was policy. I didn't raise my voice or list every small thing. I did not repeat the curb. I did not explain the envelope. The record stood. From the red envelope, I drew a brief cover note and slid it across the table. Future communication by email. Emergency channels unchanged. That's all. I stood and pushed in my chair. Thank you for dinner. I did not take leftovers. I took my binder, its weight, familiar, now steady as a blood pressure cuff. Casey hovered near the sink, torn between habits and choices. Duran stacked plates like a man who wants noise to solve quiet. I left the index card with case numbers in my tote. I chose the door over the dual. The porch air was cool, faintly of cut grass. I texted myself 3 lines, 8:31 p.m. Remark, recorded decline, observed. The night didn't applaud. It simply held. I walked to my car with my binder under my arm and a quiet I had earned. Behind me, silverware chimed, busy with what paper had settled. I started the engine and left the radio off. At the curb, I paused to breathe in damp cedar and faint sweetness from a neighbor's jasmine vine, a reminder that ordinary things still keep going, even when families try to rewrite the rules. At 7:40 a.m., the auto-acknowledge from the school hit my inbox, a plain line with a timestamp. Your affidavit packet was received. A small check mark, but it steadied my hands. Seconds later, another email slid in. Parent portal invitation addressed to a name I didn't recognize with my address, copied like an afterthought. I stared at the header, the route through servers, the time. Not outrage, observation. I took screenshots of the header message ID and the invite language, then saved them under school portal. I typed one note beneath the files, possible privacy breach, roles confused. They had reduced me to visitor in person and expanded someone else to parent on a screen. I brewed coffee and chose my next move help desk before hurt. I dialed the district help desk and reached Dina. I gave student initials, campus, my ID details, and the facts. An invitation to the parent portal was misaddressed. My email was copied. Affidavit and witness statements were already on file. No adjectives, only nouns and times. Please disable the invite reissue to the correct parent accounts and open an incident ticket, I said. I'll need the ticket number and the service window. Dina breathed, typed, and read back the incident ticket, created escalation to records confirmation email on the way. I spelled my email twice and had her repeat the number once more while I wrote it on an index card. Then I asked that the invite's message ID be preserved in the ticket notes. She agreed and added her initials and the cue name, paper before panic, procedure before pride. Mr. Lawton from District Records called within the hour. His voice was measured, the kind that reads, policy and sleep. I asked for the audit trail on contact role changes in my grandchildren's file dates, times, and user IDs tied to each edit. He recited the baseline rule, parents control roles, and I answered with what I had already submitted, a notarized affidavit of caregiving 2 neighbor witnesses and last year's pickup card with my signature. Please attach those to the student record, I said, and reflect them in any review. He agreed to open an audit review request and to notify the campus coordinator. I requested a reference number and a written summary by email, including the date the invite was issued and the time it was disabled. Policy is a wall. Doors are cut into walls by requests that are precise, polite, and written down. While he worked, another call rolled to voicemail from a district case manager. Her message was clean and specific receipt acknowledged. Next steps include verifying parents, attaching my affidavit packet, and producing an audit summary when the ticket closes. I saved the voicemail to my files and transcribed the key lines with timestamps and the callback number 4 lines that said more than 4 arguments ever could. Then I emailed Sherry a concise note. Please see ticket number and voicemail summary. I remain available for in-person verification. No accusations, no heat. Documentation is a language most systems understand. I attached the PDF of my affidavit and the 2 witness statements again so the trail remained unbroken from inbox to record. I turned to the practical window attendants. I phoned the campus clerk and asked what an emergency pickup would look like while roles were under review. Calm, cordial. She confirmed she could place a day of notation referencing my affidavit and asked for the student initials and my ID. I requested that the note include date, time, and operator initials. She read them out while I wrote. Then I snapped a photo of my call screen and saved it to the attendance tab. While the system relearns my name, I thought I'll keep the door propped with paper. When we finished, she thanked me for being clear and brief. I thanked her for the same. It was a simple exchange, but it returned a sense that procedure could still be a bridge, not a weapon. I printed Dina's ticket email and Lawton's summary 3-hole, punched them, and slid them under new tabs: IT Ticket Audit Review Attendance Memo. On an index card, I wrote a 4-part recap: misaddressed invite, ticket opened, audit trail requested, attendance memo logged. I tucked the card into the binder's clear sleeve where my wristband rested, a reminder that bodies speak, and so must records. Confidence was not a feeling. It was a stack of pages that matched what happened. I set a calendar alert to request the final audit report PDF as soon as the ticket closed, and I added Marcia to the CC list for anything labeled audit. Systems are slow, but they move. If pushed by papers that agree with themselves, they move in the right direction. I silenced the laptop and looked up as a soft knock sounded. Lacey stood in the doorway with a grocery bag and a raised brow. Tonight I said we cook, and we don't talk about them. I wrote one line on a card for the binder's front: policies move slowly, money moves faster. 2 p.m. My phone rattled like a loose hinge. Card declined again. "What did you do?" Joranne typed first, then, "This is petty." I let the screen cool. I took clean screenshots with headers, saved them under bank case ID, and wrote one line to both: "For financial questions, contact your bank with your case number, no more." Silence is not surrender. It is a record choosing its lane. I placed the device face down, entered the time in my binder log, and breathed until my shoulders dropped. The apartment was quiet enough to hear the air vent whistle and stop. I made tea, not replies. I reminded myself adults do not text fight. They document and proceed. By 4, I sat in the HOA office under a steady fluorescent hum across from Ms. Patel and a neatly stacked tray of forms. I introduced myself, showed ID, and requested camera clips from 6:20 to 6:50 p.m. On March 2nd plus the gate entry log for Joranne's plate. "Purpose personal record for counsel," I said. She printed a map of cameras and asked me to circle views. I circled curb and gate. She noted the retention window, printed a receipt with a request number, and promised an email when the file was ready. The copy paper felt warm in my hand. She explained the thumb drive fee, initialed the release, and stamped my copy. Back in my car, I photographed the receipt against the dashboard clock, then filed it behind a new tab labeled HOA footage. I wrote a clean memo line: request number, date, time, staff, initials, and the exact phrase she used for the retention policy. Before pulling away, I read the line aloud so I would remember how it sounded when the room was calm. Next, I phoned Adnan at the insurer to confirm that my earlier risk review had generated the standard driver safety notice on Casey's policy. After identity verification, he confirmed notation added. Courtesy alert sent. No accusations. Only policy language every household receives when a review opens. I requested the addendum number, the exact phrasing of the generic notice, and the posting time. He read them back. I repeated, then wrote them on an index card. Safety note equals procedure, not blame, I said, mostly to steady myself. He emailed a summary while we were on the line. I printed it and punched 3 holes the moment the page arrived. Insurance addendum slid cleanly behind the tab. I logged start and end times the queue length and the department path, so another adult could retrace the call if I could not. I forwarded the HOA receipt, the bank decline screenshots, and the insurer addendum to Marcia. Her reply arrived like a discharge summary: 3 clean points, no flourishes. 1, attach any footage to a civil demand if needed. 2, keep all replies to family in writing 1 sentence at a time. 3, proceed with estate updates, beneficiary review, payable on death designations, and a refresh of my medical proxy. She attached a checklist and a file naming convention: year, month, day, subject. I opened a fresh folder and typed the names exactly, then read them aloud to double-check myself. The act felt less like defense and more like housekeeping for a future I still intended to live. I added a 4th point of my own on an index card. If anger calls, let voicemail answer. If policy calls, pick up. I opened my fireproof box and laid the old beneficiary forms across the dining table, photographing each page before changing a line. I completed new designations, modest education trusts for the children, no direct gifts to adults until conduct warranted reconsideration. I updated the emergency contact order so a neighbor who answers her phone sits above people who do not. I listed the items to bring to the notary ID unsmudged pen-sealed envelope and wrote tomorrow's time in my planner. The form slid into a red sleeve marked "Do Not Email" with a cover sheet, today's date, and a witness line. I paused and breathed. Inheritance is not a leash, it is a legacy, and legacies expect character. If character arrives later, papers can be amended later. Until then, the children's needs are not bargaining chips. At 7:40 p.m., Casey texted, "Joranne says you're sabotaging us." I read it twice and answered once. "Please send questions by email. I will reply through counsel when needed." Then I muted the thread and set the phone face down. VIP stayed on for institutions only. I wrote a 2-line log entry time wording and slid it behind family communications. Let storms move past glass. Let paper stay dry. I rinsed my mug and stacked tomorrow's envelopes by the door so morning me would not have to hunt. The urge to explain rose and fell like a wave that breaks too far out to wet your shoes. I let it pass. I am not stingy. I am specific. Specific keeps the peace when tempers look for tinder. Before bed, I set an alarm labeled HOA Pickup ID Sealed Drive. A sticky by the door read, "Bring binder. Bring calm." I left an index card. Policies move slowly. Money already has. The line steadied me more than tea. A garage door sighed. A child laughed. I faced a window. I wasn't chasing anyone. I was ready to answer a knock at 9:02 a.m. Ms. Patel called. "It's ready." Her voice was the tidy click of a file drawer. HOA footage and the gate log would be available between 10 and 11:30. I repeated the window, asked about ID fee and format. USB plus a printed log, she said. I wrote those words on an index card, "Collect, don't comment," then slid the card into my binder's front sleeve, the way nurses tuck consent forms where no one can ignore them. Tea steeped. I set out my license and a plain envelope for receipts. Anticipation sits differently at 66. It is not jittery. It is steady like a pulse you have counted before. By 10, I stood at the counter under humming lights. Ms. Patel verified my ID, then placed a sealed USB and a stapled packet on the laminate. We watched the clip once on her monitor. Headlights flare. The rear door opens. I step down. A hand flicks something small toward the curb. The car noses forward and is gone. No soundtrack, no accusation, just light in motion doing what light in motion do. She added the gate log plate characters. Timestamp lane number. "You can request a retention affidavit," she offered. "Please," I said. She printed it. The paper came out warm. In the parking lot, I kept the chain intact. I photographed the sealed USB and the stamped logs beside my dashboard clock, then dictated a memo received 10:38 a.m. Seal intact, no edits performed. I texted Marcia footage and logs in hand. Delivery Monday. Copies stay with me. She replied with a check mark and good. Eat lunch. I smiled and did not. Instead, I filed the packet behind HOA footage and set a sticky "Ask for certified copy if needed," because habit wins when adrenaline wants to sprint. Home again, something waited under the mat. A white envelope block letters. I recognized Mr. Keene. He'd seen the drop-off and later reviewed a porch camera angle from across the street. He was willing to sign an addendum to his statement. I called to thank him. "After dinner," he said. After dinner, I agreed. I printed a 1-page addendum with his original affidavit reference, left blanks for date time, and the specific camera description, then clipped a yellow note, "Bring ID, please." Human decency is a quiet trellis. You notice its strength only when vines lean. At noon, the inbox chimed with school cheerfulness carnival volunteer list attached. Inside the PDF under Family Volunteers, my name appeared in track changes crossed through and replaced by Family Friend TBD. The metadata panel showed the editor a parent account linked to Casey's email timestamped 9:47 p.m. last night. I took screenshots of the header, the edit pane, and the line itself, then saved the trio under School Carnival. Sting, then clarity. I sent Sherry a short-form email attaching my affidavit and witness statements and requesting the edit audit plus restoration of my name for background check processing only. I did not moralize. I documented. I opened last spring's caregiver calendar to be sure my mind wasn't gilding memory. Week after week, the same pattern lived there, in tidy squares. Friday pickups, Saturday pancakes, Sunday evening returns with laundry folded and library books renewed. I scrolled through photos that never made it to social media. Bandaged knees, a spelling bee ribbon, a lopsided papier-mâché volcano. None of that is a claim. It is simply a record of presence. Presence can be hard to see when convenience gets loud. Policies can be changed with a keystroke, but routine leaves fingerprints. I printed 2 months of that calendar and hole-punched the sheets, not to wave them at anyone, only to protect the ordinary from revision. Then I wrote a single line in the margin. The story of a family is told in timestamps. It steadied me more than any speech I could have made. It also reminded me why I keep ink nearby and my sentences short. I made duplicates of the HOA packet and slid the originals into the fireproof box. The copy set went into a courier envelope labeled for Monday. I logged the carnival sequence into the audit ticket from yesterday and added one line to my card: no speeches, artifacts only. Vindication is not gloating. It is proofreading the world when people edit you out and pretend the document never changed. I poured the tea I had ignored, took 2 sips, and felt the temperature of my day return to human. At 4:25 p.m., predictability arrived in 3 gray bubbles. Sitter canceled. Can you take the kids tonight? We'll be late. I read the words twice, then replied with the policy I had already given. I don't take same-day unscheduled care. Please arrange licensed care. Emergency-only exceptions apply. It's just one night, she wrote. Be a grandma. I answered. Being a grandma is why I asked for paperwork. The phone stayed in my hand until it stopped feeling heavy. I logged the exchange with headers and time and filed it behind family communications. Dusk found me at the sink kettle, humming USB, resting in a small metal tin on the counter. I labeled the tin with today's date and a single word: gate. The house kept its quiet shape around me. Paper in its folders, names in their places. The day had asked me to choose between pride and proof. I chose proof and discovered it is, at my age, a better kind of pride. I turned off the stove, set tomorrow's list beneath the binder clip, and listened for nothing at all. Records speak. I don't have to. I wash the cup and spoon. At 8:15 a.m., I sent Marcia a clean bundle, the HOA clip receipt, the gate log, and Friday's screenshots from the volunteer list. Subject line: neat attachments named exactly as she prefers. The body was 1-sentence artifacts attached. I'm available 9 to 11. I opened the binder to legal, school, and HOA, set the kettle, and placed my phone face down with Do Not Disturb on, exceptions only for council and the district. When you've run night shift, you learn that readiness is a posture, not a feeling. At 9:12 a.m., Mr. Lawton's email arrived with the audit trail PDF. Cold lines, firm dates. The carnival edit that crossed out my name came from a parent account linked to Casey's email, but the connection traveled through an IP range registered to Joranne's employer VPN at 7:31 p.m. on Wednesday, the night of the dinner. I put the PDF beside my table notes and the courier receipt. The overlap didn't argue. It simply aligned. I forwarded the file to Marcia with 2 lines and a photo of my dinner agenda card case numbers on one side, courtesy on the other. By 9:40, Marcia called. We reviewed the audit stamp and the HOA materials, then she moved to paper. Preservation and limited contact letters went out to Casey and Joranne, to the school and district, and to the HOA. The letters were plain: keep the records, keep the logs, keep the footage. Contact by email only. No threats, no defamation. I received the CICD copies with certified mail barcodes and logged each number on an index card. Paper before voices. It keeps the room cool. At 10:28, an unknown number left a voicemail. Page HR and Compliance at Duran's employer requested a call about possible misuse of company network for off-duty harassment. I did not discuss family. I returned the call with counsel looped by email. My statement was narrow. I cannot provide details. Please direct questions to my attorney. I can confirm I received an audit record noting your network on a personal edit that impacted me. Page thanked me and asked only for the header of Marcia's preservation email. I forwarded that header, nothing more. By late morning, the inbox tilted. Casey wrote, "This is blown out of proportion. Take down whatever you sent." I replied with one line. "Please address counsel on CC. Do not contact me by phone." Minutes later, Duran sent a long defensive note about randomized VPNs and how we were at dinner. I filed it without reply and tagged it, "Preserve." I have learned that arguments create heat. Records create light. At 2:05, I sat at Ms. Ashu's notary desk. I signed the estate update's modest education trusts for the grandchildren, refreshed medical powers of attorney, and a short letter of intent. Ms. Hishu verified my ID stamped and made careful entries in her log. I paid collected copies and photographed the seal beside today's newspaper date. I can love my family and still protect the future. Love without boundaries is praise without breaks. Before 4, Marcia confirmed postal acceptance of the preservation letters and shared a templated cease and desist held in reserve. Our plan: wait for the district's roll restoration steps, deliver the HOA media originals to her vault on Wednesday, and keep all communication in writing. I set reminders, updated tabs, and let the quiet do its work. When a house is orderly, breath returns to its natural length. At 5:37 p.m., another unknown local number left a message, mandatory mediation, and a district compliance meeting callback scheduled for morning. I breathed once, then texted Marcia tomorrow 2 calls. I set the phone down, rinsed my cup, and slid the notary receipt behind the estate tab. The day had not asked me to win an argument. It had asked me to choose a lane. I chose the lane where pens make promises real. After I hung up with Paige, I wrote a short process note to myself, the kind new nurses learn on day 2 and veterans keep for decades. Limit scope. Confirm channels, memorialize the contact. I listed the time, the number, the name, and the phrase I had chosen: possible misuse of company network. Exact words matter when adults disagree. Then I thought of the residents I had coached to keep their voices level while families trembled in doorways. Calm is not indifference. Calm is care measured out so it does not spill. I breathed in for 4, held for 4, out for 6, and felt the room widen again. The body remembers what the mind forgets when the phone rings. As evening colored the blinds, I walked the binder from kitchen to desk and back again, checking each tab like a nurse checks drips on a night round. Legal held the barcoded letters. School held the audit and the affidavits with their witness addendum. HOA held the receipt, the gate log, and a paper sleeve labeled USB Do Not Touch until counsel copies. I wrote out tomorrow's aims and a few plain questions. What is the district's process to restore my standing as a caregiver of record? Which forms are needed and which signatures are policy versus preference? Who closes the audit ticket and when is the report archived? I added one human line to steady myself: I will not speak to hurt. I will speak to clarify. Then I set a sweater by the door because meeting rooms are always too cold when the stakes are high, and a pen in the tote that writes on the first stroke. Before bed, I circled tomorrow on the calendar in green. Green means go not, rage, movement, one measured step at a time. At 8:55, I opened the district link and centered my binder in the camera's frame. Marcia's square lit beside mine. We let the record speak, she said, and I nodded. The waiting room looked like every other video grid I've ever seen. Muted faces, a patience that is part courtesy, part armor. I placed a pen across my index cards so they wouldn't curl. I breathed in slow the way I taught anxious families in triage and waited for names to appear. Mr. Haynes, the mediator, joined, first followed by Ms. Ortega from compliance. Roll call, ground rules, the expected reminder to speak one at a time, then the button I cared about most. This session is recorded. The district will retain the transcript. I said yes. So did Casey and Joranne tiles lit from a kitchen I knew too well. My face did not move. I let the pen be still. We began with exhibits. I held the audit trail report to the lens. It showed the Carnival edit made from a parent account tied to Casey's email, routed through a VPN, registered to Joranne's employer, stamped at 7:31 p.m. on the night of the dinner. I laid the volunteer list with track changes beneath it, the portal invitation that had gone to a stranger's inbox, and the HOA materials, the gate log, the curb clip that didn't need music to sting. Mr. Lawton confirmed authenticity. Sherry, by email, affirmed the committee would follow whatever compliance decided. I did not editorialize. Paper did that for me. Ms. Ortega read findings in even tones. Unauthorized edits and attempted exclusion violation of PTA ethics. Remedies restore my volunteer status pending the usual checks, assign a neutral liaison for all campus communication, place an audit lock on future role changes. The portal would reflect me as an authorized emergency contact with documentation on file. Restoration would be effective today. Casey whispered that they had been stressed. The mediator thanked her and moved on. I wrote the word restored on an index card and underlined it once. Next came civility. The district adopted a no-contact rule outside email for school matters. Any harassment would route to compliance. The preservation hold extended 90 days. I asked that the liaison copy Marcia for 30 days while routines settled. Granted. Bank issues were noted only in passing. The account separation and perk removal remained in place under the case number I had already memorized. I felt something in my chest unclench. Not joy, not triumph, just a slackening like a knot taut by wind beginning to forget. After we left the district room, Paige from HR called with Marcia on copy. She explained an internal review would run on possible misuse of the company network. They would not discuss outcomes with me. I said I understood and provided the meeting header that showed the recording time. Compliance does not need my anger. It needs my timestamps. Paige thanked me for staying within process. I logged the reference number and closed that tab. The mediator emailed a summary to all of us before noon. It was dry by design. Dry leaves traces. Casey sent me a line that read like an apology until the phrase "you felt" gave it away. I forwarded it to Marcia without a reply and opened a template I had prepared months ago, long before Curbside Neon and $10. Through counsel, I confirm that my estate will fund education trusts for the grandchildren and that no adult will receive direct gifts until conduct improves, reviewed yearly. Love can be steady and still have edges. In the late afternoon, the liaison wrote volunteer orientation next week. Glad to have you. I read the line twice. I walked to the closet and took down the tote where I keep my stadium blanket and a tiny bottle of sunscreen for Saturday fields. On the kitchen counter, the clear sleeve with the ER wristband lay beside the yellow visitor band from earlier in the week. I did not throw them away. They were not trophies. They were markers on a road. At dusk, I brewed tea and carried my mug to the porch. A spring breeze rubbed the wind chimes against one another until they made a sound like glass letting go. I opened the binder not to add but to place an index card on top. Protection, not punishment. Truth, not theater. The sun slid behind the oaks and left a ribbon of copper along the curb where a car had once idled. I remembered the feel of folded cash against my palm and the weight of deciding not to chase a car down a street. Sometimes the loudest exit is the one that leaves quietly and keeps going. My phone buzzed once with a new message from the school my background check had cleared. "See you soon," it ended. I powered the phone down and watched the sky go the color of cooled steel. I do not know if apologies will ever arrive, and I do not wait for them. I will show up when it is my turn sign where process requires and cheer from the bleachers with my blanket over my knees. The rest can choose the same road or not. Either way, I am not standing at the curb anymore. Before I went in, I sealed the $10 bill back into its envelope and wrote the date, the place. And one quiet sentence, I kept the money, so I'd remember I didn't spend myself. I slid the envelope behind the first tab, closed the rings, and turned off the porch light. Tomorrow will be schedules and forms and a liaison's friendly reminder. Tonight is simply peace earned by paperwork and the choice to stay kind. I keep the binder near. I'm 66, and here's the truth. I earned love. Needs boundaries and dignity. Needs receipts. When family turns care into leverage, answer with calm. Process, not louder pain. Paper won't hug you, but it can hold a door open to fairness so your heart can stay soft and your back can stay straight. If my story nudged you to protect yourself kindly and still show up for the kids, tell me, what boundary do you wish you'd set sooner? Did a record ever save your day? If this resonated, comment 1 or where you're watching from. If it didn't, say why I'm listening. And if you value quiet strength and steady hope, subscribe to catch the next story. Your voice keeps this porch light on.